Want to build the structure of your data models before worrying about importing data? You can start with an empty model and define your measures and dimensions manually. Keep in mind that this is the recommended approach for planning models. In a new model, dimensions for version and date are created automatically. The version dimension contains a default version for actuals. When the model is complete, you can add other versions by importing data to the model or generating data in stories using a range of ad hoc and structured planning features. In the date dimension, you can set the default booking behavior for values, either distributing the values across all levels of the default hierarchy or booking them to an unassigned member. Next, you can specify the time range you want to cover. You can then set the time granularity to the smallest unit of time you want to plan on. Keep in mind that finer granularities generate more data. You can open the model preferences for additional date and time options, such as optionally enabling a week-based date pattern for planning or changing the default period name label. If the fiscal year for your organization doesn't match the calendar year, you can enable the fiscal year option and choose the appropriate settings. The model is enabled for planning by default. You can choose the date dimension to use for planning if the model contains more than one. Define the planning area for any tables to optimize performance, and optionally change the default data disaggregation settings for data locks and validation rules. Models support data in multiple currencies by default. If you want to aggregate those values to allow planning using different currencies, you need to enable currency conversion, which is covered in the How to Set Up Currency Conversion in Models video. Next, you can add the remaining dimensions to the model, either by creating new ones or by adding existing public dimensions. You can start with the model's organization dimension, which is where you'll specify the currencies in which you'll be importing or entering data for the model. To further customize the dimension, you need to edit the dimension table. Once the dimension has been created, you can define the IDs and descriptions for the members, the currency, and the person responsible for planning activities related to each member. If desired, you can also add other properties manually, or define a hierarchy for the dimension by specifying a column to contain parent values. You can now define the measures you want to work with. You can create measures as separate objects, specifying names and details for each individual item, or create a single measure to capture numeric values, and then create an account dimension with multiple account values that are stored in the single measure. Here, you can set the unit type to currency and either choose a single currency or show each member's value in the model's organization dimension. Keep in mind that here, the model has data in US dollars and euros, and currency conversion is not enabled. That means that the values in different currencies can't be aggregated. Using the fixed option for this example would treat the data as if it was in a single currency and ignore the settings from the model's currency column. Now you can create a new account dimension that specifies all the individual accounts that contribute to the measure. Each member needs an ID and a description. You can build a hierarchy of your accounts by specifying the parent account for each member, up to the root level. There are many specific options for customizing the attributes for individual accounts. For example, you can use the formula attribute to calculate values based on functions, operators, and other accounts. You can use the account type attribute to classify accounts as income, expense, asset, liability, and equity, or non-financial. And you can use the threshold attribute to define ranges to classify values as OK, warning, or critical to change how associated values display in stories. Next, because the model uses an account dimension rather than separate measures, you need to set the structure priority in the model preferences to prioritize properties and calculations from the account dimension. You can complete the model structure by creating generic dimensions for any other relevant ways of dividing or aggregating values, such as product information. You can capture the product groups using a parent-child hierarchy. Once your dimensions are ready, you can save the model. Now that the model structure is complete, you can import data into it from the Data Management workspace. Alternatively, you can manually enter data in tables or use structured planning features such as data actions or value driver trees to generate values. These steps are covered in other videos. For more details on how to set up models for planning, check out the links in the description and try it for yourself today.